So you like
Playoff OT.
eh? Well, have all that
Playoff OT.
in the world!
More. More.
I don't understand it.
First time experiencing a cup champion flameout like this? This is what the NHL playoffs do to people. They eat you alive and force you to embrace horrible methods of self-torture. Cogliano and Helm were knocked out long-term. Cale Makar enjoyed a one-game trip to Suspension World. And Tkachuk left the team in the middle of the series for whatever the hell's going on with trafficked prostitutes in his personal life. It left the Avs top-heavy and hollow, but did you really have to be stymied by your former goalie in Grubauer? Same guy that couldn't make a save throughout the season? Seattle was the better team for most of the series. Just wasn't meant to be this year. One more parting gift, your captain's gonna be out all of next season as well. Next year might not be it either. I hate to inform you, Wild fans, but Daddy still hasn't returned from his trip to buy cigarettes. We regret getting your hopes up after hitting at a 2-1 series lead with home ice advantage neutralized, but reality is a cold being. As heartless as being without Joel Eriksson for all but 20 seconds of a shift. As laid bare as being stripped by the Stars' power play. As frustrating as being outmuscled by your opponent in all three zones. The stereotype of Minnesota sports is to lie down and die. And Dean Evison will do a good job of fulfilling it. No matter what is attempted, you will bow down to your superiors. Dallas took your team, took your cup, and has now taken your dignity. 2-13 in playoff series since 2003. It's a fate worse than death itself. This is about what I expected, an underachieving team that proceeds to blow a tire when it matters. All they did was the same shit they've been pulling all year. Flashes of greatness followed by silence, beaten by former backup Laurent Brossoit. Overcoming a 4-1 deficit at home only to squander the opportunity in overtime. Giving zero fucks and checking out to plan for summer vacations in Game 5. Rick Bowness was absolutely correct in his assessment. Gutless and listless. This was your last chance with this core, Winnipeg. And you crashed and burned. It wouldn't shock me one bit if this franchise punches in the nuclear codes. Too much smoke involving core players wanting out. Too much cancer in the locker room that needs to be forcibly removed. It should have happened last year, but this is the only way you heal. It's for the best. You weren't doing shit anyway. You had him. You had him right by the fucking throat. You were up 2-1 with a 3-0 lead in Game 4. You could have buried them right there. Yet the same issues we feared were going to be their undoing had them plunge the knife in themselves. An inability to stop the Oilers' power play and suspect goaltending. Once they blew that 3-0 lead in one period, Edmonton went Super Saiyan and mangled them beyond recognition. 3 straight losses to their doom. It's not a total loss. LA is close, but for the love of God, get a real solution in net. Go directly to Connor Hellebuck. Just do it. You'll thank me later. I'll give them credit for fighting with everything they had. Unfortunately, they didn't have much power to fight with. Their ailment is obvious. They lack an elite punch. And Carolina merely withstood the Owls' barrage until they could knock them out. It took longer than expected, thank you injuries to key forwards, but considering they're even better than you at the one thing you do best, it was only a matter of time before they pulled the plug on your season. It's pain, but what can you do? Canes were just better. All you can be is Zach Parise. Staring into the abyss as you wonder if Lamoriello really traded their best futures for this. I expected regression from Bo Horvat, but holy fuck! When I speak to the talent and skill of a team, I expect bothering to show up and put a modicum of effort in to be the bare minimum. For longer than 2 games? Or maybe that was because New Jersey decided to put in a goaltender that could make a save. Akira Schmidt was the turning point. Or was it just the Rangers being inferior in every facet? The only reasons why the series went 7 was because of Shesterkin and getting a shitload of chances on the power play. Did you seriously just leave Igor out to die? At least pretend to play with some passion against a hated rival. I want to sue the PR team for the Rangers for false advertising. No quit in New York? Games 5 and 7 prove that to be bullshit. Gerard Gallant, you have earned a dishonorable pink slip and cab fare to the airport. What the fuck? You seriously choked the series like that when you should have won in 5? It wasn't anything in particular, the whole team self-destructed. They had at least 6 or 7 chances to bury the Panthers and they still imploded repeatedly. You're now the meme of memes. All that history they made this year will be left to the joke book. Get the fuck out. Get out and never show your faces around here again. You seriously wasted Bergeron's potential final season like that? You are a special breed of pathetic.
Go to the church and ask God to forgive you.
The curse is over. Toronto has finally won 4 games in the goddamn playoffs. But did you really have to do it like this, Lightning? If they're in peak form, Tampa not only wins, they crush this team. It became obvious from the opening bell that this team had run out of gas after years of deep runs. How they blew games 3 and 4 in spectacular fashion, that was a 2019 throwback. They out-4-1 the Leafs! Do you know how hard that is to do? Probably not with how bad team defense has become for Tampa, especially with injuries ailing them. I can't be too angry. Toronto had to win a series sometime, but they are making it really hard with how often they've wrecked our stale memes. We don't have any words. They nearly gave us even more chaos to go with the chaos. They took a team that on paper should have dismantled them with ease to the brink. The Kraken turned Jake Ottinger into a false god without clothes in several games. Year 1 Peter DeBoer was about to be debunked in Game 7, but Seattle just couldn't get in position to kill them off. They're well-rounded, but lack a legit superstar to take them over the top. Shouldn't have to look too far to find one. If Matty Beniers and Shane Wright develop to be as advertised, you'll be deadly for a long time to come. As long as Grubauer keeps playing like he did against Colorado, of course. Can you really shit on a team in their first taste of playoffs if they give you nothing to work with? Well done, lads. You know what you need to work on. Now get to it. Next year won't be as cordial. It's the same damn shit with this team every single year. The high-end talent is dazzling. There are signs they are finally reaching the next echelon of greatness. Then they simply regress back to comfy habits and we wonder what the fuck happened. What do you think killed the Oilers this time around? It's so unsurprising. Lack of depth scoring, no defense, and terrible goaltending. Really? I thought you had this stuff corrected. Stuart Skinner? Can you make a save? Why are you still starting him with how bad he's been anyway? They just had to pay Darnell Nurse #1 money for this. The Nugent Hyman vanished, Evander Kane became on ice cancer, and even Leon got stymied after Game 2. No matter what this team does, it's wrong. A broken record that plays the same line over and over. Then put your little hand in mine. There ain't no hill or mountain we can't climb. Except for Edmonton, you can't climb Aiden Hill for some reason. On the other side of the George Washington Bridge, Rangers fans are fuming. It could have been them getting their asses kicked by the Hurricanes. Their speed and offensive firepower completely neutralized for 3 games by a stout defense. There's no lamentation or negativity needed here. New Jersey just wasn't ready to go deep yet. But that time could be coming soon. With that core and more on the way, the future is very damn intriguing. They just need a few more pieces in the development of the youth. You finally broke through the dreaded perpetual rebuild. What you do from here is up to you alone.
We want Florida! We want Florida!
When will people learn that you don't call your shot before a game is played? You're just asking for trouble. You want Florida? You'll get Florida, gentlemen, sweeping you to oblivion. Many will point to the endless controversies in this series, but the problem for the Leafs is simple. This team was built to play Boston. They weren't built for the Panthers, and they had no answers for their forecheck or top 6 all series. When you fall 3 games to none with the core 4 no showing, all that would save you is a miracle. And it didn't happen. The Maple Leafs calling card. Have a golden opportunity handed to you to go far in the playoffs and then just squander it. Unfortunately, that tends to happen when Bobrovsky magically reverts back to his Vezina form and suffocates any chance you have. So what do the Leafs do? They went all in this year. They have a core that hasn't proven they can get it done until it's too late. The contracts of Nylander and Matthews expire next year. Most of their depth are free agents, and Kyle Dubas' contract is expiring. Well, at least you won a playoff series. I guess. Everyone experiences year 1 Peter DeBoer the same way. He will bless you with a deep playoff run. He'll also hinder you from the ultimate goal. Vegas themselves learned the hard way. You'll never win a cup with him as your coach. Against quality teams and coaches, his limitations become very apparent. He doesn't change up his tactics. His groups are hemmed up in their own zone most of the time. He allows Ryan Suter to destroy any defensive reputation he had left. The team turns into Jimmy Benn trying to exhibit accountability. It just becomes a falling point. Team defense becomes a liability as fast as Jake Ottinger morphing into Swiss cheese in blowouts. This series was one of inches. Dallas chose to wither against a team with structure, their hopes being buried alive in a barrage of debris thrown onto the ice. All I want to do is find a way to rescue Joe Bobrovsky. If you want an unbelievably brutal way to go out in the playoffs, the Hurricanes have you covered. The ways they bowed out in each game against Florida, it'd be excessive for Gitmo. Start off with a marathon and a half loss in Game 1. We didn't get 5 OTs in that one, so lose OT in Game 2 for good measure. They didn't even do anything wrong, their netminders were excellent. The offense just went ice cold. Tends to happen when Bobrovsky's transcended time and space itself. The epitome of goal lead in Game 3. The only offensive bursts Carolina had were in bomb threats and FBI intervention. Even with having the best defensive unit in the league, the Panthers all but matched them. Bested at their own game. And for the killing blow, losing Game 4 with 4 seconds left in regulation. Carolina can't get over the canyon. 12 straight conference finals losses. Dog shit on the road. Another season burned in the damn incinerator. Not even the hilarious kind of brutal. It's the Jesus Christ, no living being should have to experience this brutal. Ouchies. This was quite the tense set of affairs, wasn't it? A lot of very close matchups that went to the edge. And my only regret is that every series didn't go 7. In the finals, we are guaranteed to get a first-time cup winner. And the contender in the West has been burning everything in sight to get it. I had a feeling Vegas would get back to the summit. Not just that I felt them to be a sleeper team headed into the playoffs, but because I made a vid on their desperation to win last year. It tends to happen quite a bit. I'm not even angry at it, I've just come to expect such cell phones these days. The tenure of the Golden Knights has been one where they've been on the cusp of success but haven't eclipsed immortality. Their inaugural season was one of unprecedented accomplishments. Reaching the cup that early is impossible, they all said. Yet they kept winning. Until the final. George McPhee losing to the team he managed for years. Afterwards, Vegas learned the harshest lesson to take. It's hard to reach the top. It's even harder to get back there. Years upon years of all-in pushes, the once underdog franchise turning into a juggernaut at any cost. They became the most hated team in hockey, one that painted a gigantic target on them with their moves. Not to mention the former core players they cast off for next to nothing. This is a markedly different group than the one that made it here in 2018. The only players left from that group are Jonathan Marchessault, Riley Smith, William Karlsson, Shea Theodore, William Carrier, and Braden McNabb. Those men still play key roles in the team, but there has been significant turnover, particularly of futures for instant pushes to greatness. Last year felt like a breaking point for that strategy. Over 500 man games were lost due to injury, and resulted in big changes. Peter DeBoer fired from his post, and the former prize of Max Pacioretty traded for nothing. With his injuries, it may have been for the best. This time around, there was one major difference in their approach. They made low-key acquisitions. Nothing seismic. Lurk in the shadows and pick up players at value. Let your star players develop chemistry with one another. Become a deliberate afterthought in national discussions. There's only one mantra to follow. Keep winning. Winnipeg was seen as a sleeper pick for a cup run. Fallen to the sword. Edmonton was the ultimate sexy pick. Fallen to the sword. Dallas, with their great goaltending and dazzling talent, you know the result. They keep winning. Their new acquisitions in Ivan Barbashev and Teddy Bluger have played a role in that this season. Barbashev in particular has been strong in point production and offensive zone play. But when you think of the Golden Knights, think of Mark Stone, the heart and soul captain that's embraced his role with ease. He may need to go into the shop a lot, but when he's able to play, one of the best power forwards in the game. And the salt of LTIR stashing continue to fuel him. Think of Jack Eichel. Remember the narratives about him? He vanished in big games. He was a power-hungry diva. He's a coach killer. These playoffs, he's carried the team on his back some nights. A true warrior and game changer. Think cast-offs like Chandler Stevenson, Michael Amadio, and Brett Howden. Picked up from the scrap heap to become solid contributors. Think of Alex Pietrangelo, the man who was seen as a desperate heave towards greatness. Not with his defensive prowess, he isn't. But the real question these playoffs was in goaltending. Robin Lehner has been out for the season since last July. Logan Thompson was taken out by injury months ago and hasn't come back. Laurent Brossoit was given the reins until he too got injured. Next man up is Aiden Hill. He's what we in the hockey world call a journeyman. He had decent numbers in small sample sizes, but his level of play has been a pleasant surprise. And that's putting it lightly. He's been excellent since entering play. Poised, locked in, and in peak form. He's been steadfast this time, and is a key piece for Vegas in the pursuit of their quest. Despite the run of form and return to the peak, the same goal lingers on. They must win. Those words will not cease until the cup is finally theirs. If they win, the salt of the league will be glorious for them to taste. They'll make the 2021 Tampa Bay Lightning look like a fan favorite. But once again, they don't care. The cup isn't just an aspiration, it's an expectation. 6 years feels like an eternity with how long they pushed. A markedly Canadian group will seek their first taste of that glory. But their opponent isn't all that fond of dying. Really? They made it here? The one team I didn't expect to do shit in these playoffs? With the gauntlet they had to face? If you were to tell me the Panthers would do this 2 months ago, I'd have laughed hysterically. The team that won the President's Trophy the year before only to lose in humiliating fashion in the Battle of Florida? One that shed a ton of depth in the offseason? A group struggling immensely and in panic mode? This wasn't even a narrative quashed in January. This was one mere weeks before the playoffs. Keith Tkachuk openly called them soft. Paul Maurice spent more time yelling at how useless they were than winning. They needed at least 10 different miracles just to make the damn playoffs. The Penguins don't jokingly mock one of the biggest disappointments of the season. Maurice probably ends up fired and they make huge changes to the roster. But fate is a strange way of working out. This team hasn't just gutted and grinded their way to the final. They've outright broken every franchise in their path. Boston went from the greatest hockey team in NHL history to the ultimate meme of memes. Toronto transformed from ending a 20-year curse to a chaos-ridden shitshow that might nuke the core. Carolina suffered 4 of the most brutal losses a team could ever endure in a playoff run. These were all teams that had endless ambition and had everything to prove. And none of this happens without a massive gamble made in the offseason. Poaching a disillusioned unicorn from Calgary. It took a haul and a half to do, but if they don't have Matthew Tkachuk, this run doesn't happen. He's been a monster. A near undefendable dynamo that adds not only scoring touch, but a swagger that Florida's lacked. Manual transmission levels of clutch. You want a key moment of his? Take your pick. It was as boom-bust of a move as any made in the NHL at the time of the deal. Well, it's boomed. You know who else is boomed? Sergei Bobrovsky. 2 months earlier, we were calling his deal one of the biggest albatrosses in hockey. He had done nothing but underachieve in Florida, and his performance in net was unexpected. You have to remember, for that final stretch, he was out with illness. Spencer Knight is away from the team, so Alex Lyon, a journeyman, played eons over his head and helped to guide the Panthers to the playoffs. When Bob came back, though, he hasn't just been good, he's been otherworldly. And he's only gotten better as the playoffs have progressed. This is the best he's played in Florida. And it's not even close. When the best comparison is 2003 Giguère, that's extremely rare company. The other element of their success? Full team buy-in. A relentless forecheck that gives the opposition fits no matter what's thrown at them. An incredibly opportunistic counterattack that makes their enemies pay. A top 6 that's been outright hell to play against. Carter Verhaeghe, a playoff legend in the making. Sam Reinhart, a skilled forward in his own right. Shit-wrecking Sam Bennett. Eetu Losterainen, Anthony Duclair, and the captain. The eternally underrated Sasha Barkov. One many forget is outstanding just because he plays in a non-hockey market. Although that part might be changing. Team defense was a sticking point throughout the season, but it's gotten significantly better. Aaron Ekblad is finally healthy, and has quietly been a quality defensive presence. Best to leave the attention to Brendan Montour, who's been a fucking animal these playoffs. There's also a lumberjack named Radko Gudas here. Everyone gets salty about him for pretty good reason. Gustav Forsling just sits to the side and enjoys unsung play. To add to the impressive core of depth, there are also the Stahl brothers, Eric and Mark. They somehow have not become alligator food, but quality veteran presence. Strange how that works. This is what makes playoff hockey magical. Anyone has a chance to claim greatness. Even a team that snuck into the playoffs at the last minute and faced an endurance run. There are a lot of 2012 Kings comparisons to make here, and they're very valid. But they remind me a lot more of the 2018 Capitals. President's Trophy winner the year before, embarrassingly dispatched in the second round that year, lost a ton of depth in the offseason, nobody gave them much of a chance. Not to mention having a goalie change in the middle of the first round, being on the brink in an OT game on the road in that round, then finding form and dispatching their opponents while having a shit ton of doubters at the same time. The Panthers did make it here once before in 1996. The Rats flew as they dispatched so-called greater opponent after so-called greater opponent. But that ride ended in the final. They were swept by the Avalanche machine. Now they get another chance. If they finish this run, it will go down as quite possibly the greatest Cinderella story in hockey history. The odds against them were and still are enormous, and their biggest test will be ahead of them. Will they succeed? That's the ultimate question. I've really warmed up to the idea that the Panthers are a team of destiny. The white-hot goaltending, relentless forecheck, and outstanding individual performances reinforce it. Ever since they beat the Bruins, I can't shake the idea of it. They've broken every franchise in their path, and all signs point to it happening again. There's no debate as to who I'm picking. Vegas in 5. Trust me, I know how this works. May we focus on the real joy regardless of winning. The guaranteed saltiness of Boston. Either way, the memes win.
Not available tonight. It comes down low. Hits all alone. Stopped by Hill. Sprawling save. Heiskanen. They score! Joe Pavelski! A